Hey, it's Steph, and welcome to the Straight Up With Steph podcast, where we have real discussions around health and life and just trying to be better at both. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Up With Steph. Did you know that starting in January of 2025, dental assistants will be allowed to administer local anesthetic? I had heard about it, but I didn't realize it was an actual thing. But yes, it's happening in January. And honestly, just on a side note, I think that we're going to be seeing more and more of these initiatives allowing dental assistants or other people to start doing more expanded functions within dentistry. That's something that we talk about today on this podcast. Today, I interviewed my friend and fellow hygienist, Tina, also known as Teacher Tina, and she is a well-known instructor within dentistry on things like local anesthesia, also head and neck anatomy, medical emergencies, and then she also just did a keynote presentation on career development. She's just a really cool person to talk to, and she is a natural born educator. If you've been thinking about maybe teaching either at a school or developing an online course and wondering how that works and what it's like, Tina has a lot to share today about that. She also gives some great advice on maybe some things that we should think about before leaving the operatory and like jumping ship and doing something else. I'm just always interested in people who have created something out of nothing, which is what Tina has done with her anesthesia and other parts of her business. What I love about Tina is she is exactly who she portrays herself to be, either on stage or on social media and in real life. She's just like a true blue, nice person, and I love talking with her. I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Tina. Hello, my friend Tina. How are you today?
Hey, Steph, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Oh, I mean, I always love chatting with you. And it's like sometimes with our conversations, I'm like, I wish this was being recorded, you know?
Right.
But that's what we're doing today. So I want to talk about just kind of your venture into teaching and how all that started. But I also kind of want to start at the beginning. So how long have you been a dental hygienist?
So I don't know, I was thinking about this morning. I was like, how long have I been a hygienist? So I graduated in 2001. So that's 23 years as a licensed hygienist, right? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I know. Time
It's a
flies.
long time.
I know. It's like every year I'm like, really? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
this is life. I mean, we're alive, right? So that's good.
Yes, it's true. It is. Yes.
When in your clinical career did you start teaching?
Yeah. So there's that thing, that 7-year itch, right? It's
Yep.
real. It really is real. And right at about, actually, it was probably closer to about 6 years of being a full-time clinical hygienist, I started feeling like there was more to me. I love doing clinical. I still do clinical, but I was like, there's more out there. And so getting into teaching, and I'll get to that, but getting into teaching, it was a journey because I just started asking questions to everybody, like my sales reps that came in. I was like, tell me about your job as a sales rep. What do you do? And how did you get involved in that? And just different people in different organizations of how they got into doing what they're doing, or just getting curious. And when I started asking people questions, more information was given to me. And then people were like, oh, she's curious. And I was informed of a teaching position that was becoming available in Oregon. And I was just like, you know what? Shoot. I'm just going to go ahead and apply just to apply and just see what it's like to go through an interview process for a teaching position, which I'm going to tell you is very different than any other job you will ever do. Very, very different.
I don't know. How is it different?
So, there's multiple steps to it. A lot of steps. There actually is an entire hiring committee, a panel of people that go through, and they have to create the job description, what the qualifications are. They evaluate all of the applications and then go look through to see who is even qualified to even be interviewed. And then you're interviewed by a panel of anywhere from 3 to 8 people. Like,
oh, dang.
Yeah. It's
That's
pretty
intimidating.
Intense. It is very intimidating. And it's just one of those moments of you're like, okay, you got to know your P's and Q's. And I didn't know that at the time when I applied, that that's how it was. And I'm really grateful that I didn't, because I think I would have let that intimidation probably go, maybe I won't do it. So
Yeah.
I took a chance and applied. And on my drive home from the interview, they actually called me and said that they wanted to hire me. And I was like, are you sure? Because I have no clue what I'm doing. Like, are you sure you really want me? And they said, yeah. So that's how, like, very non-traditional. Like, that is not the normal story. I will say that. But that's how my journey into teaching started.
Well, it doesn't surprise me with how just your personality and how personable you are. And it's like, I bet employers are like, okay, this person, we can teach her the job, but you can't teach like a personality. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, she's already got that, so we're good.
Yeah, and I asked them, I was like, why did you guys like hire me? And they said, that's basically what they said. They were
Uh,
like, we wanted somebody who could think on their feet, act quickly when like when everything is falling apart, can figure out how to put everything back together again, and can stand beside the students and coach the students and not dictate to the students. And I was like, oh,
okay.
well, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
was that for a like what kind of position? Was it a clinical teaching position or what?
Yes.
Okay.
So this program. This was back in 2007 is when I was hired on with them. It was actually a federally funded program. So a community college here in Oregon received federal funds to open a distance education site where it would be in partnership with a different community college to go there and run the site and teach the students. And they were looking for somebody to run that site and teach those students. And so that was it. So I was clinical educator and an administrator all at once. And the students did all of their lecture all online. It was
Okay.
all online lecture. And then I taught everything hands-on, everything. Radiology, dental materials, instrumentation, anesthesia, you name it. The only thing I didn't teach was restorative.
Okay, wait. So you went from a clinical hygienist to
Yeah.
like running something. Like, how did you learn how to actually teach these things?
Um, so um, thankfully, there were faculty at the main campus that would meet with me once or twice a week and say, okay, this is the lesson plan. They would talk through it and provide me some tips. But it was like an hour long Zoom session like this, right? Where they'd have a conversation and I'd get that kind of coaching. The rest of it, I think honestly, it's just my innate ability. It's just part of my gifts of who I am.
Well, you are, I mean, you're a natural teacher,
Thank
and
you.
that kind of, but seriously, and that brings me to your program. So, like, you were teaching at a school, and then did that kind of inspire you to start your online teaching and speaking on the things that you talk about?
Yeah. So the way that for me, my pathway, my journey, the way it progressed was I was teaching and then just like local little areas would be like, hey, Tina, would you come and speak to us about this topic, that topic? And I would come in and speak for Starbucks gift cards, right?
Yeah.
That not anymore. I will say that not anymore, but that was
We all
what I
start
did.
somewhere, you
We all
know?
start
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that's how my speaking journey began. And then as I started speaking more and attending more CE courses, I was like, I, I think I can do this differently and I can do it better. Because there were so many times I would go to CE courses and I was like, feverishly writing everything down. And then come Monday and I'm going to apply what I've learned. And I was like, crackers,
Yeah.
I don't think I wrote my notes the right way. I don't remember what it was. And just all those things. Or I wish I could go back and revisit that again and just hear, just how did the speaker say that? So I decided that I was just going to go ahead and research my own online learning platform that was outside of traditional academia and take all of the principles that I've learned over the years from teaching dental hygiene students, an adult learner in the dental hygiene world, and apply that to my speaking process and do online CE where I've gone through and recorded or do live webinars and make it available for people to go back and revisit. Once they've taken it, they can go apply it and then revisit and see how they can reapply it or relearn it again.
I mean, that's such a it is a very, it's just a better way of learning because I
I
have that
think
too.
so.
I'll go to a course and I'll think that I'll remember everything, and then 2 days later, I remember, like, 2 things, you know? I'm like, "Wait,
Yeah,
what?"
yeah, because it's
Yeah.
a fire hose of information,
Yeah.
especially, thankfully many CE courses are like, okay, we'll have your butts in the chair for maybe an hour. But like before, when you're sitting there for 4 flipping hours,
Yeah. There's no way.
no
There's no
way.
way.
No,
And
no.
especially with what you, teach because like most I would think that most people know you from your local anesthesia courses, and that,
Yeah.
like, totally makes sense for it to be a video based on demand. But what are the other things that you speak on and have courses on?
Right. So yeah, anesthesia, that's my jam. But
Yeah.
medical emergencies, I do a whole thing on medical emergencies. I even actually go into offices and will coach scenarios with offices on medical emergencies and run them through that whole process and
Okay.
get their CPR certification updated because I am also a CPR instructor as well. So I do that. I don't have my CPR online or anything like that. I like to do that all in person, but medical emergencies. And then head and neck anatomy, just like the basics, just like, let's go back to the actual basics of, do you remember what those bones, those muscles, those nerves, the lymphatics, all of that stuff, what that's called, and being able to go back and revisit it. And reminding ourselves of how many times we are looking, feeling, and talking about those structures, and uh, recognizing how those apply to not just our head and neck exam, which obviously it's very, very important for a head and neck exam, but even when we're evaluating radiographs, when we're looking at our anesthetics and looking at landmarks, uh, being able to have a um, professional, comprehensive discussion with other healthcare providers, being able
Mhm.
to use our proper dental and medical terminology when it comes to our head and neck area, it makes it kind of nice.
Yeah, and with teaching, like, I've learned this for myself now that I, like, speak and stuff. You really have to be passionate and interested in what you're talking about. Why did you pick the like, anesthesia and medical emergencies and anatomy?
Well, it really honestly, it started with anatomy. And it started back when I was doing all of my prerequisites for hygiene school. And then when I was in hygiene school, like I was that person that totally geeked out over anatomy. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Look at how our body works. And I'm really lucky because when I was in hygiene school, uh, the the anatomy course that I took, it was all of our hygiene students, and we were doing the same anatomy course as the PA students, the physician assistant students. And it was the exact same, well, probably not the exact same, but very similar to the course that med students were taking. So the med
Mm.
students took this anatomy course. We were like 6 weeks behind them. They did all the dissections on the cadavers, like real cadavers, and we would go in after and evaluate and have to identify all from head to toe anatomical
Wow.
features. Yeah. And I loved it. I totally geeked out. So that's how it started. And then when it came into anesthesia, like again, like one of my most favorite classes when I was a hygiene student, but then when I had to teach it, it was one of those moments. And um, Steph, like anytime you are teaching somebody something, like you realize just how much you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
crackers. Oh, I need to do more research on that.
Yeah.
So my first foray into teaching, it was me and 5 students. I was their only face-to-face instructor. That was it. I was their only real life person that they could grab onto for like a lifeline. And so here I am teaching them these anesthetic techniques and feeling the weight on my shoulders of having to teach them all of that. And when I went through and I was teaching them that, I realized how integral it is to have a very comprehensive understanding of head and neck anatomy, and also the importance of having the detailed feedback with that. And when I recognized that, I really fell in love with it, and getting
Mm.
to see those students go, oh, this isn't so scary. This is pretty cool. I was like, yeah, this is cool. And it just gave me a fuel that, that still feeds me today.
And
Yeah.
that's how it happens, is like we stumble across something,
Yeah.
that moves us or inspires us or changes our life. Like with me with ergonomics, completely changed my life, and then it's like you just want to share that as much as you can with people.
Yeah.
It's been pretty cool to see how your business, because you run a business,
Yeah.
and how that has morphed from doing online education, and now you're actually flying, like you just flew to Georgia,
Yeah. I
right?
got home. Yeah.
And
I got home. I like walked into my house and laid in bed at 1 a.m. this morning.
oh my gosh. So you're certifying hygienists, or is it just hygienists, or is it like dentists as well?
So, well, for dentists, part of dental school, that's just automatic thing for
Oh
their
yeah,
program, right?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now we know, like nationwide, we have one state left, Delaware, where it is not part of the scope of practice for hygienists. Now for Georgia, it just became, the board officially clarified all of the rules and regulations in September of 2020, or August, sorry, July of 2023. And then my course with them was approved in September of 2023. So I go out there and I certify hygienists, teaching them everything and getting them their certification for local anesthesia endorsement. And I do it for Georgia, and I also do it for Oregon.
Are you looking to do more states?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Actually, I do have, because because of my program, like I would love it if could just come and just look at my program and say, hey, this is everything. That would make things so much easier. I could say, this is what I do, this is the standardization, and they could approve my course. Then it'd be so much easier because it's in, it would be in all the states.
Yeah.
But because that's not how CODA works, I have to go to every single state board and present my curriculum and present my qualifications, my education, everything. And so that takes a lot of time. Takes a
How
lot
do
of
you
time.
find time for that? Because you're
Yes,
busy.
that's a great question.
Like literally, where is it? Where's the
Yeah, where's
time?
the time? Well, over the years, and I think that this is a hygiene trait, is that we tend to be perfectionists
Mhm.
and we tend to like to maybe kind of control our environment a little bit, right?
Little type A,
So,
triple
yeah.
A. Yeah.
So, over the years, I have identified items that I can release to other people to take care of for me.
Hmm.
I probably could release more off of my plate, but I have identified some items to release off of my plate, which allows me to be able to do some of that. And actually, one of the things that I did release off of my plate is I don't work clinically every week now. I only work clinically once a month now.
Okay. Yeah.
So, while I teach dental hygiene students and I have this business, I was like, something's got to give. And
And
that's what
yeah,
it had to give.
you do. I know I've reached that point too. I just kind of fill in here and there, but I was like, I cannot like justify 10 hours, because that's pretty much how long it is,
Yeah.
with everything else. And you create content too for social media, you're speaking, you're doing your certifications. Like there's literally only so much time in the day. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you've gotten a little bit of breathing space there.
Right. And it only took having several moments of like I wouldn't call it a mental breakdown, but like this overwhelm,
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
overwhelm of going,
Yep.
okay, I can't do it all. I want to do it all, but I
You
can't.
can't. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and I've been there too, and it's kind of humbling. It is humbling to realize that you can't not do everything, but yeah, you just have to pick things that you've just gotta let go
Yeah.
or reduce a little bit.
Yeah.
So now that, I mean, you still are clinical,
Hmm.
um, I always like to ask this question. So you're clinical, you also have a business and you're traveling and doing all these things. What clinical skills did
Hmm.
you notice as a hygienist that translated really well to like business and teaching and speaking?
One is being able to pivot quickly, right? The schedule's going to fall apart. someone's going to be in a bad mood. You have to
Yeah.
be able to read a room and pivot quickly. Like that is your daily clinical life. Is like the patient comes in, you've got 30 seconds to read that patient of what is their mood, how are you going to communicate with them, right? And it's kind of the same thing in business when you're having meetings or you're going and you're speaking, or if you're in a different environment. Anytime you're having to work with another person, you have to be able to read the room and know how to pivot quickly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. I did a lecture, like I would say 9 out of 10 lectures are very well received. Like, I'm feeling the audience, they're feeling me, like it's great.
Yeah.
Man, I had one, not going to say which one it was, but that was not the room for me.
Yeah.
It just wasn't it. And it was a 3-hour lecture was what I
Oh
know.
man.
It was long, but I was just like, okay, and after the first, I don't know, 15 minutes, I realized that this wasn't to my audience. And I had to kind of change how I delivered the presentation, which I've never delivered it that way before.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we got through it. But yeah, you definitely have to think on your feet.
You do, because and I think every just like clinically, every patient connects with every hygienist differently, right?
Hmm.
And like you said, that wasn't your audience. It's just knowing that that's okay. Like, yeah, just you can't be everything to everyone, which is really, really, really hard to accept. I'm still learning how to accept that. And I think that is something that we can also take from the operatory to the additional items that we can do in our professional life, is that just because you don't connect with a patient doesn't mean that you are a substandard clinician. It just
Yeah.
means that that patient connects with somebody else differently.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
that's
what it means.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
When I
that's
was
why there's lots
younger,
of different types of clinicians.
yeah, yeah. And it's nice when if you have options within the practice, it's like, okay, I did not vibe with this patient. Like you see
Yeah.
how it goes with you. Um, how do you, with everything that you're doing,
Uh-huh.
how do you find balance between all of it? I mean, we just talked before we started recording that after
Yeah.
this, you're gonna have some quality time with your boyfriend, which is great. But
Yeah.
yeah, how do you balance everything?
Well, I would love to say that I've mastered that.
Well,
And
me too.
when that happens, I will no longer need my coach, because I do have a coach.
Oh, do you?
Which,
Okay.
yes, it's
Okay.
actually you interviewed her, Michelle Galloway.
Michelle, yeah,
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 of
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her. I highly recommend her. Just so you know. Um, but yeah, that really, it comes down to having, for me, is very clear boundaries. Boundaries for myself, because I have to self-parent a lot, saying, nope, this is non-working time.
Mhm.
Like it is, I don't go on the computer, I don't do this, and I am fully present with this moment, or fully present in this situation. So having my own personal boundaries, and then also making sure that I have boundaries with the people that I serve as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, yeah, if you start with a boundary, that you can just kind of plan everything around that, right?
Yeah.
But you just have to
Right.
stick to it. And
Yeah.
that can be hard.
Yeah, it can be really, really hard. And true story, like this might be TMI, but like a little over a week ago, I had a colonoscopy, and
Hmm.
afterwards, the nurse, she was like, "You're not allowed to work for the rest of the day." I was like, "Yeah, I know," and she's like, "No, not even here." So she's like, "Don't check your emails, don't do anything," and I was like, "Yeah, okay." And what did I do? I checked my emails. And there was like a list of things, and I instantly went into panic mode of like, oh, I need to respond to this person, that person, this person, and didn't allow myself to take a health day, a sick day. Like in any other type of career or 8 to 5 job, when you take a sick day, like you're home and you're on a sick day. But
Hmm.
when you own your own business, and you are your own business, which I know you completely understand, that's really hard to do, to take a sick day.
It is, or
Mm-hmm.
even separate yourself from work. Like when I was a full-time hygienist, of course there were challenges with that, like with everything, but I clocked out and I was done.
Hmm.
done for the weekend, for the night, whatever. Now my work literally is like 10 feet away from me. It's just they're staring at me all day. It's like I have no separation
Yeah.
between work and, so it's definitely a challenge. Not saying that I regret it or anything. It's just you have to be clear with those boundaries.
Right. And it's one of those things I think that everybody needs to recognize is, the grass isn't always greener. It's
Yeah.
just a different type of a grass. That's really
Yep.
what it is. It's just a
Yeah.
different type of a grass.
Totally.
Yeah.
I saw you post, it was somewhat recently that you did a keynote
Yes.
presentation, and that
Uh-huh.
was on something else that you're just now starting to speak on, right? Can you tell us about that?
Well, kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So, the presentation was creating your professional masterpiece, and it was literally just a my journey of how I got to where I am. And I don't, and let me rephrase that. It wasn't my journey. I used my journey as an example of how you can do different things within your professional life. And that everything that we do, from early on childhood, college experiences, professional experiences, they are brushstrokes to the canvas of our professional life. And so that was what the presentation was about, and just using examples of when there's great moments, when opportunities present themselves, when hard moments come, and I was very real and very raw about some of I would say the most professionally challenging episode of my entire life, sharing that as well. And if I wouldn't have gone through this very, very, very hard time, I actually wouldn't have started Teacher Tina RDH as a business.
Hmm.
It was like how struggles and tragedy can create something beautiful. And I think you can relate to that because it was, your struggles with your own uh, body mechanics and thinking you're going to have to hang up, your loops and your scalers and leave dentistry that drove your passion. So yeah, that was what it was about. And I loved it. It was a very cathartic moment for me. And
Good.
I really think that the audience, they came up and were happy. So I think it worked out well. I don't know.
I'm sure it was great. Do you want to tell us what that moment was?
I won't go into grand details for sure,
Okay.
but what it was is I had an opportunity to work with a different type of an educational program, not the one that I originally started with, because that one was federally funded. It lost its funding. And when it lost its funding, there was another program here in Oregon that was opening up. And I got to be on the ground floor of that and be one of the original faculty members and help build that program, help build the team, be a part of the team. And I was, I taught everything. I actually became a program coordinator there. Anyhow, things happened and my contract was no longer renewed. And I was physically, mentally, and emotionally invested in this place. To this day, I have no idea why my contract was not renewed. I have asked numerous times to find out, and I don't know. And I still to this day struggle to understand why that happened. And if that wouldn't have happened, it wouldn't have given me the kick in the ass that I needed to go all in on myself, honestly,
Isn't
because
that
I
funny how
was,
things work
yeah,
out? But
yeah,
also, like, I would be the type of person that's like, "Okay, it's cool if, like, you don't want me anymore, but just tell me why. If I'm making a
yes.
mistake, I don't wanna make it again," you know?
Yes, and
Yeah.
that is the thing. And so to this day, I struggle a lot. Like, am I doing everything right? And one of the comments that was given to me was that I was sharing the things that I was doing outside of academia and making other people uncomfortable, and that I was no longer to talk about what I do outside of academia. And that, and I was just really getting going with my public speaking. I was writing articles. I was on editorial boards for different dental hygiene magazines and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And So that's really stuck with me. And it has actually made it really hard for me to even share about anything that I do, anything. All the things that I've accomplished, I very rarely ever talk about them because I
Geez,
don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable.
yeah,
And
it's almost like you don't want to get in trouble or
I don't want
something.
to get in trouble. I'm like, don't, I don't, it's like, okay, my nose has been smacked. I don't want to do that again. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Well, it was
just,
probably just a matter of it wasn't the right room for you. Just like that lecture I did. It's just not the right one.
yeah. And that's the hard thing is because at one point in time, it was my family. It was my family.
Jeez.
And
Yeah.
then administrations changed and, I was no longer, I was now the outsider. Yeah. Yeah.
That
So it was
I've
hard.
been the
It was hard.
outsider. It's a
Huh?
bad feeling.
Yeah.
That's a really bad feeling to feel like
Yeah.
the outsider.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened, but I just did actually just before you, I recorded with Sarah from CE Zoom,
Oh
and we
yeah.
were talking about just these challenges that come up, and you think that they're going to destroy you or make you second guess everything, and then looking back, that was the driver for you to like really jump up.
Yeah. Yeah. It really was. Is like it was one of those moments where, and everyone will have them, right? Everybody will have that moment where you're like, okay, the chips are down. Do I
Mhm.
just go ahead and cash out, go home, and never come in again, or do you bet on yourself? And um, that is a very personal decision that each person has to do. And there are times when betting on yourself is 1,000 times harder than betting on somebody else.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
scary.
yeah,
But that's where you really realize how strong you are is when you just put everything into yourself no matter what.
right.
And I think that's when entrepreneurs kind of get in trouble is when they um I don't know, stop believing in themselves or take their foot off the gas or whatever you want to call it. But it's like you just got to keep your mission in mind and like just keep going.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? When
Mm.
especially in today's day and age when you everything is so easy to comment from the sidelines,
Or behind a
right?
screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember the quote exactly, and it was I think the original author was one of our former presidents, Roosevelt, but Brene Brown says it all the time. But it is about glory to the person who's actually in the arena, slugging it out and doing it instead of sitting up in the grandstands and just commenting about it. It's like, yeah, you don't know until you are actually on the battlefield what it's like.
That's true. Yeah. And in my younger years, I would be that person, like judging
Mm-hmm.
people or whatever, just because I didn't know any better. But now it's like I give people maybe even more grace than I should. But I know what it's like to be that person who's being criticized, but they don't really know what I'm going through.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And be able to know like everybody's literally doing the very best they can with
Yeah.
all the resources that they have.
Yeah.
And so let's just can we just be kind and happy with
I
each
know.
other?
I know. Like just be nice. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't cost you anything to be nice.
No, it
Um,
doesn't.
Going back to teaching and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
what advice do you have for someone who maybe wants to pursue teaching?
Yes. Well, this is what I will say. Teaching is not for everyone. Not everybody should be a teacher. It is
Mhm.
not the answer to I'm tired of working clinical, so I'm going to be a teacher. And,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, I think there's a fairly large group of people that say, oh, well, when I'm done doing clinical, I'll just teach. Um, and and I think it's important to recognize that because
Yeah.
we need to have quality educators so we can continue to have a quality profession. So there is that. If somebody really wants to see if teaching is for them, uh, I wouldn't recommend going my route. Like I said, my story is very unique. Generally, my best advice is go to the school, see if you can do any kind of job shadowing be in the clinical session, and maybe start off as an adjunct in the clinical environment just to see how things go, to see if it is something that you even enjoy doing, because teaching is a lot of sharing of information, and you're also an advisor, a counselor, a life coach. You are a trusted confidant, because as we all know, dental hygiene school is very, very stressful. And
Yeah.
when you encounter stressful moments, uh, students are emotional. And I don't know, I lost count how many times I cried when I was in
Oh,
hygiene
yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, yes, it was because the program was challenging, but it was also just very stressful. And tears happen.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
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 And your course too, like online teaching, it's just such a great avenue to like share information, even if you don't want to become a teacher or an
Mm-hmm.
instructor. And your course in particular is just like neat as a pin. Like it's
Thank you.
just so how did you figure that out? Did you have someone help you or are you just good?
So how, like, I'm just that good. No, no, literally how it started was, teaching dental hygiene students local anesthesia and recognizing that they were getting a fire hose of information at their face all at once, and going, this is a critical skill set that really needs to have true comprehension over. And so what I started off doing is I would just right before class, I would record my lecture, or after class, I would record my lecture and I would present it to them live in person. And then I would upload the recorded lecture to them so they could go back and revisit some of that
Oh,
information. And
smart. Yeah.
I found that when I did that, when they got it in person and then could go back, that they started retaining the information and performing better. And that's when I realized I had gotten the idea that I had, that I was onto something.
Hmm.
And so that's how that started. And, thankfully with the hygiene students, I just started playing around with, zooming in on images and drawing on the PowerPoint and doing that. And then I just taught myself. I'm a DIYer, and I figure I'm just going to figure out how to do it myself. And so now when I record my lectures, I have a whole recording studio software that I use, where I can go in and I can record. I can zoom in on particular things. I can zoom in on my face. I can zoom in on the PowerPoint. I can pause like a video. Like if I'm doing a anesthesia video, I can pause the video and highlight certain aspects of that. And I just literally pretend that I'm talking to a person while I'm recording.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Because I've taken your course and it's easy to follow. The graphics are obviously awesome. So
Thank
just
you.
wondering
Thank
how you
you.
did all
Thank you.
that. Yeah,
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much.
Um, what advice would you have for someone who maybe not necessarily teaching, but if they want to branch out of the op and do something different?
uh, First thing I would say is, be curious at looking at what all is out there, and if get really clear on, is it that you really want to stop doing clinical work, or is it that clinical environment is no longer serving you and you need to find a new clinical environment? So I think gaining clarity on those two things are very important. And the answer could be both. It could be you want to do more outside of direct patient care, and or you need to find a new place to do direct patient care. So get clear on that. And honestly, I'm a big fan of assessments, of self-assessments. When I did the Clifton Strength Finders, it's like, I think it's Gallup Strength Finders. But when I did that, it really provided some clarity for me in regards to what my strengths are. And that when I go through and I'm doing something where I'm like, is this a harebrained idea? And then I realize, oh no, that's just me utilizing some of my strengths,
Mm.
and finding a place where my strengths can shine, that really made a huge difference as well.
I feel like that would be useful for someone who is like, okay, I want to get out of or I don't want to say get out of the op. That
Hmm.
makes it sound negative. But if they just want to
Right.
do something else, but they literally have no idea what that would
Yeah.
be, like they don't know if they would enjoy sales or education or like working for a company. But an assessment is probably a good place to start, right?
Yeah, it really is just to go through and just
Yeah.
identify where you are with your strengths, because like if you're going to go into sales, you have to be somebody who is a great communicator. You have to be somebody that is very approachable, that you can create great relationships with, that somebody would be like willing to trust and hear what you have to say. That you're not going to just be a BSer and just
Yeah.
say whatever has to be said to get the sale done. Like truly believe in what you're selling. And that would be the other thing. Like if you think you're like, oh, like sometimes it's very organic where people are like, oh my gosh, I love this product so much. And you just can't stop talking about it, right?
Hmm.
Like your cushions, right? You love your cushions so much, you just can't stop talking about it. And then it just becomes a very natural type of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, you have to be passionate. And I like what you said earlier. It's like, it's not a good thing to just be burnt out and tired and then think that this new job is going to solve all your problems because it's not. And it's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to just get worse.
Right. And, something to remember too is that like if you are like, you try something new and that sucks, and you try something new and that sucks, like what is the common denominator within that? And sometimes it's ourselves
Usually us.
and
Yeah.
the frame that we're looking at everything.
Yeah.
And if you're going into everything kind of with that Eeyore woe is me attitude, maybe it's just a little time for some, personal development, self development, maybe get a coach to
Yeah.
help
No.
you go through that process.
Yeah, I was just going to say Michelle, she's great, and
Yeah.
it's not easy to admit that you might be the problem. I've been there plenty of times. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it's literally me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but it's humbling, but it's also like another opportunity to grow, and you can figure some shit out, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so before we wrap up, I did want to ask your opinion, just because you're an instructor and
Yeah.
a hygienist. What is your opinion on these various initiatives that we're seeing allowing dental assistants or other people to start doing hygiene duties?
Well, um, you know, I think one, we have to really be clear on what are we considering hygiene duties, because um, in the state of Oregon, dental assistants can also, with their proper certification, can fill a restoration. So the doctor prepares the tooth and the assistant fills it.
Mhm.
With that education, assistants can do radiographs. They can place sealants. So I think we have to really kind of be clear on what we're talking about. Oregon just made it legalized for assistants starting in January with the proper education to administer local anesthesia.
Mhm.
Um,
Now, do they have to sit
I
for boards for that?
no, they do not. They do not. And and we can even if we want to go long, I can go into that whole process. I was actually on the advisory board for the group that put that initiative together. So I'm happy to dive into that. We totally can. Um, but in regards to um, like the scaling and the perio charting and those types of things, I think that what we're going to see, and I'm just going to be kind of, I guess, neutral on this topic,
Mhm.
because within the world of medicine, we see a lot of different layers of healthcare providers. We have CNAs, we have nurses, we have nurse practitioners, we have nurses with an associate, we have nurses with a bachelor's degree, we have nurse practitioners, doctors of nurse practitioning, we have or physician's assistants, MDs, DOs, a huge variety and multiple layers of the medical field. In dentistry, we basically have three, now four. You have your
Yeah.
assistant, your hygienist, your dentist, your dental therapist, or dental therapist, dentist, if we go in kind of that kind of ranking order. And I think our struggles with a lot of this comes from change. Change is not easy. And that we do not create new professional names for these transition level professions. So, a dental assistant that has not gone through a certification or become an expanded functions dental assistant, like they just all get called dental assistants instead of
Mm-hmm.
an EFTA or an EFTA with restorative. So I think that we have to be very, very clear on the level of the education of that blanketed dental assistant. Same thing with hygienists. Like they're all hygienists, but we can have a hygienist who has an expanded practice permit, who can own their own brick and mortar, all of these different kinds of things, but still labeled as hygienist when
Mm-hmm.
there is additional levels of licensure and permits associated with that. So I think that it's going to happen. We're going to see the evolution of the scope of practice for a dental assistant, just like we've seen the evolution of the scope of practice for a dental hygienist.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have an opportunity as a profession to, instead of fight the conversation, to be a part of the conversation and to have a moment of, okay, if this is going to happen, what would it look like to be what is the level of education that's required to make these things happen, and where does the overlap change? And I think that's the hardest part in this whole process. So that's a really long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your perspective. And me personally, it's like, I don't want to have the knee jerk reaction of just being like, no,
Right.
because I would never want to hinder someone's desire to advance their education and have more diverse skill sets or whatever. Because like hygienists can do restorative treatment, which I think is great,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, it's like, um, we just can't put the cart before the horse
Yeah.
just because we're in a desperate situation right now with the hygiene shortage. And just making sure that, hopefully assistants, if they choose to do this, that they would have to prove competency in some way,
Right.
not just have on the job training and then all of a sudden they're a hygienist,
Right. And I think that's where the conversation probably needs to be more focused. Is this is happening, let's find an effective solution. And I think the
Mhm.
challenges are, one, we do not have a nationwide standardization for
Mhm.
any of dentistry, really.
Yeah. It's
Um,
weird.
it
Yeah.
is very, very weird. And the unfortunate reality is, I believe the majority of the nation, dental assistants may not necessarily always be regulated by the dental board. They're just
Mhm.
under the license of the dentist. And so, you know, that I think that kind of regulation probably will need to come back into play in regards to some of that.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel like we need a complete overhaul, which I know it's not easy and it takes time and we need solutions now. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just a tricky situation. I would like to hear a bit though about the dental assistant anesthesia certification if you have
Yeah.
time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and just do some historical perspectives on it first.
Okay.
Um, in about 2007, 2008, in the state of Oregon, is when it became legal for hygienists and assistants to place restorations. Now, the state of Washington, hygienists have been doing it for longer than that. But that's when that became um, within the scope of practice and the board rules came through. Now, when that was going on, of course, the doctors got very concerned. And so I can understand why hygienists are getting, we have to remember doctors were scared of us doing these things. And so,
Yeah.
we wanted to do this and we have to understand that. So anyway, um, so assistants have had that right here for a really long time. Unfortunately, not a lot of them wanted to pursue that education. Well, fast forward like 10 plus years, there was a group of dental hygiene students at a university here in Oregon that for their capstone project, they were assistants who went back to school to become hygienists, who were thinking about this whole process. And they're like, there's so many times when the dental assistant is waiting on the doctor to provide anesthesia so they can begin their restorative procedure. And in order to be able to use the restorative functions as an assistant, to be able to just come in, anesthetize the patient, and just be a co-therapist with the doctor in that regards. So they started this initiative as their graduation project, and I got to be on their advisory board. And it was me, an oral surgeon, a couple of other educators, some dental assisting educators, and we pushed back on all of their, like some of their curriculum. We're like, if this happens, they need to have extensive information pharmacology and medical emergencies and head and neck anatomy, all of this stuff. It went forward to the Oregon Board of Dentistry, lost some traction. Well, a little over a year and a half ago, it was brought back up again. And I was on that advisory team again. And I just said, this is what that would look like. And it's like 65 plus hours of education. It would have to be the exact same kind of education that a hygienist would receive in regards to administering local anesthesia. So extensive head and neck anatomy, pharmacology, techniques, patient management, medical emergencies, all of that. So, so I was on advisory. I actually wrote the template of what that curriculum looks like and submitted that to the board. And when they were reviewing whether or not this was something that they wanted to do, they went ahead and, based off of the curriculum that I submitted, suggested curriculum I submitted to them, they went ahead and approved it with some modifications. They removed the requirement for a board examination. They said that because hygienists in the state of Oregon do not have to do a board examination for their local anesthesia, that everybody just has to demonstrate competence, that they want it to be a competence-based evaluation by whoever is educating them. Also, they originally it was written as, I think, 5 years of experience as a dental assistant, as an expanded function dental assistant who is certified. So it's a certified expanded functions dental assistant. They took it from 5 years to 1 year, but they have to be certified. They have to be an EFTA. And so in general, that means they have to also have gone through a dental assisting program. So this isn't a dental assistant that was brought in off the streets and had a 2-week, like, this is how you sex spit course and not cross-contaminate. So there is some of that behind there as well.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So this is going to take effect in January?
Yeah, it will take effect in January. So now because the board made changes, I have to resubmit all of my curriculum to them to see if they will accept that. And then I'm also advising several community colleges here in Oregon as well on how to implement into their curriculum if they want to do continuing education courses or anything like that, how to implement all of that. And I will say this whole initiative was also supported by the Oregon Dental Hygiene Association.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I think because it was released at the same time as everything else that was a release from the ADA on their House resolutions, that it has caused, it just was like another little ember in the fire of frustration that's happening.
It's crazy right now. I'm actually interviewing someone right after this about the whole foreign dentist doing hygiene things. Anyway, so she knows about all of that stuff. I don't. So we're gonna get some insight about that, but it's just nuts right now.
Well, I want to say this one thing that because I go into Georgia a lot to do the certification programs. We have to have a dentist on site for that. So the dentist on site, she was a foreign trained dentist who also became a hygienist but has the dentist for her teaching. And when she was there observing, she was like, dental students do not get the level of education on administering local anesthetic that hygienists do. And she was like, we need to revamp our education program for dentists and for what they do. And she even said that foreign trained professionals don't get the level of education on anesthesia that these people just received. So it's fascinating.
Was she saying dentists who are trained here in the States don't have the same level, or is it dentists trained out of the country?
Both.
Oh,
dentists trained here in the States. And so when she was telling me what the dentists received, now I'm going to say this, it's not every single dental school, because I do know some dentists who did receive some pretty significant training.
Mhm.
And I also have heard from more dentists than not of that they basically had, here is a like 2 hour lecture on administering local anesthesia. Here's your 2 to 4 hour stab lab. Now go do it. And without any feedback, without any detailed instructions.
Yeesh.
So you can understand, like, if a dentist is, if that's the level of education that they've received, you can understand why they would be hesitant of maybe a hygienist doing it, because in their thought process, like, they would have received more education on it
Yeah.
than what a hygienist would, but it's actually flopped. Just same thing with
Interesting.
infection control. I found out that I was talking to a dentist this weekend. She said they learned zero infection control in school.
That's why. Because I've worked with some dentists and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah. So, so I think, I mean, we could just go on and on and on
I know.
about the challenges and the double standards in education with all of that. So I don't know. I could
Yeah.
soapbox. I could get on my soapbox. Don't get me started.
No, maybe we'll have to do another episode, like Tina's soapbox episode, because there's a lot, and I think that there is a lot of changes coming, and I don't think that we're prepared for it. Anyways, I guess we'll see what happens. But thank you so much for your time today. I always enjoy talking with you. And if someone wants to reach out to you or learn more about you, what's the best place for that?
Oh, well, there's several. You can email me, Tina at teachertinardh.com. And then, of course, I invite you to follow me on social media. On Instagram, it's Teacher Tina RDH, Facebook, and YouTube, Teacher Tina RDH, all the things. And I just say, I just one thing. I'm gonna go on a limb and I'm gonna plug myself. But right before Thanksgiving, I'm going to have my local anesthesia book called "Hit Me with Your Best Shot" will be published before Thanksgiving. I'll have the PDF version published and ready and available, and it's great for the whole entire dental team, and there'll be links to videos and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited about that too.
OMG, that's so exciting.
I
Okay,
know.
so I'm gonna link everything that you just said in the show notes.
Thank you.
And if I can share anything about your book, please send it to me. I would love
I
to
will.
share it.
Thank you.
That's what a huge accomplishment that is.
Yeah, I'm really excited about
That's awesome. I can tell you're just like
it.
beaming. Okay, thank you so much, Tina. Have a great afternoon with your boyfriend. I hope you unplug. And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Steph. Bye.